ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So thank you all for joining in. Yesterday we had, or we can say we did our discussion yesterday from the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where we learned about Lord Shri Krishna opened the 9th chapter with telling Arjuna, idam te guhyatamam, I am about to give you the most confidential knowledge. And what is the nature of this most confidential knowledge? Rajavidya Rajguhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyakshva Sagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartam Avyayam. It gives you the highest bliss, as the best of the knowledge. Rajavidya Rajguhyam, the most confidential. Pavitram, the one who receives this knowledge become purified of all material contamination, freed from all sinful reactions. Like that, Lord Shri Krishna glorifies. And then Lord Shri Krishna speaks about his inconceivable relationship with the spiritual world and the material world. And therefore, after that, there's a discussion about different worshippers, wherein we discussed on the subject matter of, if Krishna is that one God, what about others? We had discussed about 4 tattvas: Krishna tattva, Vishnu tattva, that is, Shambhu tattva or Shiva tattva, Shakti tattva, and Jiva tattva. We learned through our yesterday's discussion the Devatas are also Jivas, but empowered personalities holding very important positions meant for the overall management and administration of the universal affairs on the behest of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, like that. And finally, after this, we saw, after this discussion, from 26th verse up to 34th verse, we saw that how bhakti is so simple that it does not require any pre-qualification. What is a qualification? Only bhakti, to have love and affection, devotion for Lord. Anyone, rich, poor, educated, uneducated, ugly or beautiful, weak or strong, anyone can take to the process of bhakti. Patram pushpam phalam toyam Yome bhaktya prayachati. Krishna says, if anyone offers me patram, pushpa, palaha, toyam means water, with bhakti, with love, I accept it. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna talks about the nature of the pure devotion as well as his relationship with Lord by saying that apichesu duracharo bhajate mamananya bhaki. Even if my devotee does the most abominable activities, sin, in other words, yet he remains steadfast on his path of devotion. Why abominable sin? Maybe due to conditional nature, past bad habits. Somebody may commit some mistakes, overpowered by the past habits and the current situation of the influence. Life is always at risk under the influence of Maya. But if he is determined, steadfast, Shipram Bhavati Dharmatma, would very quickly become a purified soul again. And Krishna asked Arjuna to declare it, that my devotee Name Bhaktya Pranashi never ever gets destroyed. We had a long elaborate discussion on the subject matter, and finally Lord Shri Krishna concludes the 9th chapter by saying, Manmana bhava madbhaktumadayajima namaskaro mamesh evashasi yuktvaevam atmanamat parayana. Always remember me, always serve me, always worship me. Like that, Lord Shri Krishna establishes the the nature of devotional service, where for the devotee is always absorbed in the thoughts of the Lord. Krishna says, do that. Why? If you do so, you become purified. And after that, when you come back to me, just like Krishna is the charioteer of Arjuna, like Krishna washed the feet of Sudama, like that, Lord Shri Krishna reciprocates as a humble servant of the devotee. So, as I discussed yesterday also, who is God, who is Lord, or who is Master, and who is servant is very difficult to comprehend in the relationship of the pure devotees and the Lord. So, to rise to that occasion, to rise to that situation, to come to that platform, Lord Shri Krishna says, absorb your mind in me. And that's where the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita begins, where Arjuna began to ponder how to fix one's mind on Krishna. And Lord Shri Krishna now will speak on the subject matter in the 10th chapter. How many of you have faced a practical challenge? A challenge to remember Krishna through your daily activities, through your profession, or through your different activities that you perform on a daily basis. How many of you would agree that you face such challenges to remember? Krishna says, always remember me. Yes or no? Do we face such challenges to always remember? So that is what the subject of today's discussion. Yes, a living entity, Krishna says, have this genuine struggle. So through this discussion that Krishna is going to have here, Krishna speaks about his vibhuti, through which once a person understands, he can perceive Krishna within this universe, simultaneously understand Krishna to be the source of the creation. That is the subject matter for today. Let's begin with it. My presentation somehow has disappeared to me. I'm trying to locate where did it go. Yeah, we are back on the presentation. So the acronym for this chapter that we're going to have is C, where first section talks about Krishna says, I am the source of everything. And this chapter once again begins with emphasizing on the need of hearing. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Bhuya eva mahabhavo shranu me paramam vachaha yatteham priyamanaya vakshyami hita kamyaya. So just like we did yesterday and before also, there will be a lot of verses which we'll be quoting today. So I'll read out the shlokas and I have given you the right to unmute yourself. Feel free to volunteer and read out the translation. All right. So here we go with the first verse. And I'm again trying to locate my presentation. Is it visible now?
Yeah.
Yeah, something wrong with today with my computer. Anyways, let's see. Okay, go ahead. I guess it should be visible now. Please read.
Listen again, O mighty armed. It's gone.
Okay. Okay, should be coming now. Please read out.
Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend. For your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained.
So Krishna says, I'm going to give you a knowledge which is better than what I've already given. In other words, in the previous chapter, Lord Shri Krishna spoke about Hare Krishna. Can devotees mute themselves? Lord Shri Krishna spoke about bhakti, the glories of bhakti in the previous chapter and the relationship between the Lord and the devotee. Here, Lord Shri Krishna will speak, which is a little more confidential knowledge and which is about his opulences. See, to glorify oneself is always, for example, if you have done a great accomplishment, it's not a nature of a humble person to speak about it publicly, or a nature of a gentleman to speak about oneself publicly. However, in a confidential relationship, you might reveal to your confident associates of some great accomplishments that you have done. So now Krishna has spoken about the glories of bhakti, relationship with his bhakta. Now Krishna is going to speak about his opulences. And it's not always easy to speak about one's own greatness, at least for a gentleman. So text 1, as what we see here, in chapter 7, Lord Shri Krishna spoke about his different energies and how they act. Chapter 9, he spoke about the bhakti, and chapter 10 is now going to speak about the opulences. So once again, Krishna says, Shunu paramam vachaha, hear from me. So eagerness to hear is the qualification to properly receive the message. That is a point here. And definitely Arjuna is eager. And what is the benefit of hearing about Krishna? Firm faith develops. We'll see in the next slide also. Prabhupada explains, when somebody hears about Krishna, he becomes more fixed in Krishna consciousness. However, how should one hear? Our hearing should happen in the association of devotees. And which kind of devotees are we talking about? Those who are always eager and anxious to know more about Krishna. Now, interestingly, all through Bhagavad Gita, you might have observed Sanjaya, when it is about Arjuna, he says Arjuna Vacha. But whenever it's about Krishna, he never says Krishna Vacha, he says Bhagwan. So today, in today's discussion, we'll briefly touch upon the subject of Bhagwan. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vyasa says, Ekona vimshe vimshati me vrishnishu prapya janmani Rama Krishna viti bhuvo Bhagavan aharat bharam. Translation, please.
Shall I?
Yes, please volunteer.
In the 19th and 20th incarnations, Lord advented himself as Lord Balarama and Lord Krishna in the family of Vrishni, the Yadu dynasty, and by so doing he removed the burden of the world.
So why am I speaking about this? The reason is simple, because interestingly, prior to this verses, Srila Vyasa spoke about various avatars, Vishnu incarnations. However, he did not ever mention anyone as Bhagavan. When it came about Lord Shri Krishna, he addressed him as Bhagavan. That is a point which we wanted to bring up to the notice here. So why Sanjaya addresses, Vyasadeva addresses, why they all address Krishna as Bhagwan? What is the purpose of it or meaning of it? Is that what we are trying to take a look here? And my computer is so user-friendly today, what can I say? So fine, let's take a look at Bhagwan. So Srila Prabhupada describes what Bhagwan, and we're just going to elaborate on this theme in the next set of slides, which we're going to have it. So many times people ask, is there one Supreme Lord? Please take a look carefully. Jesus never claimed himself to be God. He said, I'm son of God. Prophet Muhammad was messenger or prophet. Moses said he was messenger of God. Guru Nanak was regarded as a great spiritual teacher. Buddha taught meditation and renunciation. Mahavir Jain was a liberated and perfected soul. None of them claimed to be a God. So question arises, who is God? Who is that God? Everyone is talking about God, but who is that ultimate God? So Krishna is the Bhagavan. Why? Because he has all the 6 opulences, and not only 6 opulences, he also is the source. He's also the supreme proprietor, supreme controller, and supreme enjoyer. However, right now, for the sake of this presentation, we will see how he fits into the definition of word Bhagwan given by Parasara Muni in Vishnu Puran. In Vishnu Puran, Parasara Muni says as follows: Ashwarasya samagrasya virayasya yashashashriya jnana vairagayaschaiva shanna bhag itingana. Translation, please.
Bhagavan is thus defined as one who is full in 6 opulences, who has full strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation.
So let's take a look. The first opulence of God is wealth. Here is Vishnu. and who is massaging the feet of Vishnu is Lakshmi. Somebody is rich, we call him Lakpati, Karorpati, Arapati. But what do we call Vishnu? As Lakshmipati, and Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune. Therefore, Brahmaji says, Chintamani prakarasatma shukalpa vriksha Rakshavratishu surabhi abhipalayantam Lakshmi sahastashat sambhrama sevyamanam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Translation, please.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis.
So, Lakshmi Sahastashat Sambhrama Sevyamanam. Brahmaji is saying Krishna is served by hundreds and thousands of unlimited Lakshmis. Who can be more rich, more wealthy than Lord Shri Krishna? Second opulence of God is strength. Krishna was hardly 2 days old when he killed Putana. All through Vrindavan pastime, so many demons came to attack Krishna. Trinavat, Shaktasur, Aghasur, so many of them. In fact, what you see in the picture right in front of your eyes is a 7-year-old boy lifting a whole mountain on his tiny finger for 7 days, 7 nights, and humbling Indra, the great king of gods. So who can be more powerful than Krishna? Third opulence of God is fame. Krishna, either he does a great act according to the morality, or he does so-called infamous act. If he steals, he calls Makan Chor. If he runs away from battlefield, he calls Ranachor. If he dances with the gopis, he is called Gopinath. If his mother ties him with an ukhal, he is known as Damodara. Like that, Lord Shri Krishna have so many names, so many songs from the beginning of the time. Poetry has been written glorifying Krishna, and it continues even up to today. I'm giving a very brief synopsis on this subject matter. Otherwise, this is a detailed discussion that we do with comparing, equivalent famous persons or the respective opulences of people in this world. Now, let's talk about fame. Just for fame, for that reason, the nature of any of this opulence in the material world is you are never, or you can never maintain your topmost position forever. For example, once upon a time, somebody was called as God of the cricket. Anyone knows? Who was, by the way, people used to say he's the god of the cricket. Now that god of the cricket is no more the god of the cricket. I don't know if there is a new god or not. So people get wealth, people become famous, but not forever, not for always. But Krishna had always been. Not only that, his beauty. All living beings were enamored by the beauty of Lord Shri Krishna. In fact, Cupid came to attack Krishna so that he could get attracted to gopis. But when Cupid, the love god, saw the beauty of Krishna, he fainted. So anyways, there are many, many descriptions about it. Just one more example of Mother Rukmini was said to be the most beautiful woman at that point of time, whom Shishupal madly wanted to get married, and that Rukmini wanted to get married to Lord Shri Krishna and actually arrange for her own kidnapping. Krishna, the most knowledgeable, Arjuna had not hinted Krishna that, please prepare your notes. You have a 2-hour talk to give on the battlefield. Arjuna suddenly asked Krishna, and Krishna began to speak Bhagavad Gita, which Krishna himself says that is the most confidential knowledge which I am revealing to you. Like in 7th chapter, verse number 2, Krishna says, Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyami aseshtaha yajnanatvaneha bhuyonyaj jnanatapyam avashishyate. I shall not declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. Knowing this, nothing else to be known. And I believe all of you would agree, when person has fame, when person has wealth, when he has strength, when he has beauty, he has knowledge, it is but obvious a person also has a lot of pride and arrogance. it is not possible for a person to be actually renounced. However, the sixth opulence of the God is renunciation. Look into the picture. What do you see in the picture? The Supreme Personality Godhead, who we just discussed now, the strongest of all, the wealthiest of all, has taken a humble role of a charioteer of Arjuna. Just one example of his renunciation. Krishna, through his pastime, proves again and again he is a Supreme Lord. He was less than 2-year-old when he showed the whole universe within the womb or within his mouth, not the womb, sorry, within his mouth to Mother Yashoda. And same Krishna, when he grew up and when he was 89 years old at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, once again showed his whole complete universal form to Arjuna, which is the subject matter of next chapter, 11 chapter like this. So like that, it proves Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But how do we know about Krishna? If Krishna is so great, how can we learn about Krishna? Is it ever possible? So very interesting verse Krishna speaks. This is the second verse of 10th chapter. Krishna says, Name vidhu surgana prabhavam namahasya ahamadirhi devanam mahashinam cha sarvasha. 10th chapter verse number 2. Somebody please read out the translation.
May I, Prabhuji?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Neither the host of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulence, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages.
So what Krishna is trying to say? Krishna is saying we cannot understand him. Why we cannot understand him? Even the best of the sages and best of the devatas do not know him. Brahma got confused and he kidnapped the calves and the cohort, the friends, the gopas of friends of Krishna. Indra got confused and therefore he wanted to drown the residents of Vrindavan, and both of them got humbled later on. So Krishna says, because I am the source, aham adarhi devanam, I am the source of the devatas, I am the source of the rishis, therefore they cannot know me. How is it possible for a son to find out the cause of his father's birth unless the father tells him himself? Is there a way through the empirical or research that he could figure it out who was responsible for the birth of my parents? It's just not possible. That's the point. So therefore Vishwanath Chakravarti says, because I am the cause of all of them, they do not know about my birth, just as the sons cannot know about the birth of the father. And Baldev Vidyabhushan writes, I am the cause of their appearance and bestower of their intelligence. I give to them all their position of devatas, and their powers being satisfied with their worshipping. Means I am the source of everything what they have. So Arjuna pondered, what will be the result if we know you? And Krishna says, one who knows me. Many people say God is great, but people don't know how great is God. Krishna says, one who knows me as I am, he will be freed from all material miseries. He will engage in my devotional service and develop attachment to me. So like this, from 4th verse up to literally 7th, 8th verse, Krishna speaks about his prowess, his inconceivable potentials like that. And finally, we see, and I believe it is the 7th verse purport, where Srila Prabhupada writes a very beautiful purport. Prabhupada says in the purport that many people say God is great, but unfortunately people do not know how great is God. Please read out a very beautiful purport written by Srila Prabhupada. Somebody.
Generally, people know. Okay, carry on.
Generally, people know that God is great, but they do not know in detail how God is great. Here are the details. If one knows factually how great God is great, then naturally he becomes a surrendered soul and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord. When one factually knows the opulences of the Supreme, there is no alternative but to surrender to him. This factual knowledge can be known from the description in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and similar literature.
So, why people do not have proper faith? Because lack of knowledge. Everyone says God is great. People from all religions describe their God to be the greatest. And most of the people of different religions even don't know the name of their God, what to speak about the features and attributes of the God. So unless we learn about or hear about God from bona fide sources or the God Himself, we cannot know Him. But the question arises, then why do people still have faith in God where they don't know about God? It's a valid question. And there are actually 4 prominent reasons why people still believe in God despite not knowing anything about God. First, D refers to desires. People go to temple and they think there is some devata. If I offer my prayers, he or she may fulfill. Just to fulfill their material desire, they go to the temple, but they would never ever read any text, any scripture, or would never ever attend any lecture, even if it is going in the temple. They just go, they put forward their request to the Lord as if He's their, what you call as ring boy, which means ring boy means you ring a bell and the person comes to attend to your needs. So for them, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is like a bell boy or the ring boy, you want to call it. Second reason why people believe in God despite having no knowledge about God is the fear of the unknown. They think if that person exists, if the Lord exists, let Him be satisfied. What's the problem if I offer one agarbatti? They don't know anything, they don't have faith, but just fear of someone great, because of which they have some faith. Third reason why, social pressure. Due to social pressures, social prestige, a lot of people follow certain rituals, but again, they have no knowledge about God. And the last is traditions, which refers to family traditions, or blind adherence to traditions that may come up. How many of you have experiences where either you were asked by your kids, or as a kid, you asked your parents, you asked your mother and father, why do you do this particular ritual or this particular fasting? Why do you worship such and such God? How many of you had asked this kind of a question? And how many of you got an answer? I don't know. My mother and father used to do it. I am doing it as it is. Don't ask questions about God. It is an offense. You also do as I am doing. How many of us have that experience? Yes? No? No? Yes? Raise a hand or something. So that's the point here. So these are some of the reasons. So you have to understand why the modern generation is becoming hopeless. And the reason is simple. They are becoming hopeless for the same reason, because today the modern science teaches them, they should have scientific reasons. They should have logic behind putting faith in anything. But now when the same kids go and ask their parents, the parents are unable to give them any scientific logic and reasons for their worship or spiritual practice. Therefore, studying of scriptures, hearing about the scriptures from bona fide sources is very important. And Krishna, again from 7 chapters, banging on the same point. Here, here, and here. Such is the importance of hearing. Hare Krishna. My laptop is a little bit stuck again, so let's go back to the presentation. That's the point. After this, let's go to the next section of 10th chapter, where Lord Shri Krishna, continuing with this theme of speaking about himself, now would speak about his essence, which is called as essence of the Gita. These are the next 4 shlokas, which are the most important shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, called as Chatu Shloki Gita, where in the first shloka of this series, Krishna speaks about how he is the cause of the material and spiritual world. In the next verse, Krishna talks about those who knows about Krishna, how they live their life, what is their lifestyle. And in the third and the fourth verse of this Chatushloki, Krishna talks about how I reciprocate to my surrender devotees whose life is dedicated to me. So let's take a look. The first Chatushloki verse, this is 8th verse of 10th chapter. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam Buddhabhava samanvitaha. Somebody please read out the translation.
I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly knows this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts.
What it means, what is the practical application of it? It means universal brotherhood. Krishna is the source of everything, all the living entities, which means we all have a common father, that is Krishna, which means every living entity is my brother and sister. Srila Prabhupada was visiting Australia, was giving a program in a church which belonged to a forum known as St. Francis of Assisi's Church. At the end of the program, one of the church members asked Srila Prabhupada, Swamiji, what do you think about St. Francis? Prabhupada didn't happen to have much knowledge about St. Francis, or maybe was not aware much in detail. Srila Prabhupada asked, what was his philosophy? And the man said, St. Francis believed and considered every living entity, either the plant or the animal, the humans, everyone who lived as his brother and sister. Srila Prabhupada had tears in his eyes rolling up, and Prabhupada said, oh, he was a pure devotee of the Lord. So, how does such a person who understands Krishna to be his eternal father and who understands his relationship with every living entity, how does such a person lives his life? Is but an obvious question. But before that, Srila Prabhupada writes a very, very beautiful purport establishing the supremacy or the establishing Lord Shri Krishna to be the supreme personality of Godhead by writing a beautiful purport. With your permission, we'll read it out. It's a very important purport, and where Prabhupada quotes various Vedic references, authorized references to prove how Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. So, with your permission, let's do that. I would need a volunteer to read out the whole purport. Somebody, please read out.
A learned scholar who has studied the Vedas perfectly and has information from authorities like Lord Chaitanya and who knows how to apply these teachings can understand that Krishna is the origin of everything and in both the material and spiritual worlds, and because he knows this perfectly, he becomes firmly fixed in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. He can never be deviated by any amount of nonsensical commentaries.
Please go ahead.
All Vedic literature agrees that Krishna is the source of Brahma, Shiva, and all other demigods. In the Atharva Veda, that is Tapani Upanishad 1.24, it is said, Yo Brahmana Vidadati Pravaha, Yo Vai Velani Cha Upayati Sma Krishna. It was Krishna who in the beginning instructed Brahma in Vedic knowledge and who decimated Vedic knowledge in the past.
Yes.
Then again the Upanishad says,
Ataha Purushoha Vai Narayano Kamyata Praja Srujayati.
Then the Supreme Personality, Narayana, desired to create living entities. The Upanishad continues,
Narayanad Brahma Jayate, Narayanad Prajapatihi Prajayate, Narayanad Indra Jayate, Narayanad Asto Vasavo Jayante, Narayanad Ekadash Rudra Jayante, Narayanad Dvadasha Adityaha. Please read.
from Narayana, Brahma is born, and from Prabhuji,
Is it visible?
yeah, it was very small actually.
Okay. I
From
guess.
Narayana, Brahma is born, and Narayana's practitioners are also born. From Narayana, Indra is born. From Narayana, the 8 Vasus are born. From Narayana, the 11 Rudras are born. From Narayana, the 12 Adityas are born. This Narayana is an expansion of Krishna. It is said in the same Vedas, Brahmano Devaki Putra. The son of Devaki, Krishna is the Supreme Personality. Narayana Upanishad 4. Then it is said, Eko Vai Narayana Asin Na Brahma Na Isano Na Po Nagni Sama Meme Tvai Aparthivi Na
Nakshatrani Nasurya.
Nakshatrani Na Surya. In the beginning of the creation, there was only the Supreme Personality of Narayana. There was no Brahma, no Shiva, no water, no fire, no moon, no heaven and earth, no stars in the sky, no sun. Maha Upanishad 1.2.
Hare Krishna. That is the advantage of hearing from a bona fide Acharya. Just within one purport, Srila Prabhupada, quoting hundreds, various Vedic references, establishes how every Upanishad, every aspect of the scriptures establishes Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, aham sarvasya prabho matah sarvam pravartate. Iti matva bhajanti mam. So, what does a person do? Or how does a person live his life who knows the truth about Krishna? This is what Arjuna begins to ponder next. And to answer that, Lord Shri Krishna speaks in the 9th verse as follows. Machchitta madgata prana bodhayantah parasparam katyantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Translation, please.
The thoughts of my... Okay.
The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me.
So they are always absorbed in thinking about me, chanting my names, discussing about me. I understand some of you might have a question, but Prabhu, we are not in this state. We have a lot of practical issues in remembering Krishna all the time because we have household affairs, we have professional life, so many responsibilities. Neither our consciousness is so attracted to Krishna, although we want to do it, but I don't think so we are ready. So what do I do? So therefore, our acharyas have given us a path through the means of Srila Prabhupada, a Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, where we perform regulated devotional service, which includes 16 rounds chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, reading and hearing of scriptures, eating Krishna Prasadam, following 4 regulatory principles, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex. Like that, living one's life, simultaneously performing one's duty dutifully towards professional life, family life, personal life. Like that, when we live a regulated life, then gradually through the practice of this Bhakti Yoga, the Bhakti culture, the heart gets purified and a devotee begins to develop more and more attractions towards the Supreme Personality Godhead. And that is a way of success for us. So text 9, just to give you an example, there are 2 stages of devotional life. One is preliminary and second is mature. In preliminary stage, the relish comes from the service itself. Therefore, it is important for a devotee to have some service with which they can associate and serve the Lord. When the person is in a mature stage, then he derives his relish not only from service, but also from his sadhana or her sadhana, the chanting, the service of the Lord, like deity worship, etc. Then it is mentioned, Krishna mentions here, thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me, live fully dedicated to my service, and they derive the greatest satisfaction and bliss, always conversing about me. So this is how you see here how the devotee is always engaged in serving God. So what do the devotees discuss? They discuss about the nectarian pastimes about the Lord, which either they read or hear from scriptures or from sadhus like that. So after Lord Shri Krishna speaks, what does the devotee do? The obvious question comes. Baldev Vidyabhushan actually raises this question. But how is it possible for a devotee, for an ordinary man, in comparison to great devatas and rishis, to grasp, to understand Krishna, who is infinite in form, qualities, and powers, just through the teachings of a guru or just reading the scriptures? How is it possible to understand the infinite by the finite? This question is beautifully answered by Lord Shri Krishna himself in the next verse. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam enamam upayanti te. Krishna says, one who is engaged, satata, always, yukta, yukti means engaged, bhajatam, and doing what? Bhaja, service. How? Priti purvakam, with love. Krishna says, dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. In this picture, you see a classic hero of ISKCON movement, one of the very great founding members along with Srila Prabhupada, who really assisted Srila Prabhupada, and a very, very great personality, a celebrated example in ISKCON. His name is Jayananda Prabhu. I can only say that I can be proud in my life of only one thing, where I also graduated from the same college where Jayananda Prabhu also graduated. He studied at Ohio State University, and I guess only good thing that I did in my life was graduate from the same university where such a saintly person studied. So Jayananda Prabhu got connected to Srila Prabhupada in the early 67, 68, and he was so dedicated towards his service. He is called as the chariot man. He single-handedly built the first chariot of Shri Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra, and he brought about the Jagannath festivals all over of America. He would build Jagannath big, huge carts by himself. Now, how an American man, a boy, would have the knowledge about building the Rath? Okay, Srila Prabhupada drew the drawings, but still, how do you do so? Krishna says, Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamapiyati. I give the intelligence to those who are dedicated in serving me, by which they can come back to me, by which they can continue to render service unto me and develop strong attachment to me. This is just one example that I'm presenting in front of you. Not only this, Lord Krishna further says, Tesham evanukam partham aham jnanajam tamah nashyami atma bhavasto jnana deepena bhasvatah. Krishna says, Tesham evanukam partham. Kampartham, mercy, Tesham, unto them, I, by my causeless mercy, what I do, aham, I, what do I do? Krishna says, Angyana jamatamaha, because of ignorance, the darkness which have arisen in the heart or the consciousness of a living entity, because of the ignorance of the true nature, Nashyami Atma Bhavasto, I dispel it, I destroy it by the torchlight of knowledge. Jnana Deepena Bhasvata. Just as and when the sun of the spiritual knowledge rises in the heart of a living entity, all ignorance gets destroyed. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna explains. In essence, we can only understand Krishna by Krishna's mercy. So the secret of bhakti life lies in pleasing Krishna, lies in pleasing Guru and Vaishnavas. In Padma Puran, there is a verse that says, Krishna speaking to Arjuna, Arjuna, those who say they are my devotees are not my devotees, but those who are devotees of my devotees are my devotees. Krishna is pleased when we serve Krishna's devotees, and when Krishna is pleased, when Vaishnavas and Gurus are pleased, our success is so short, as just we read about it. After this, when Arjuna heard it, Arjuna declared Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Before that, just want to see some different types of yoga. What are the different types of yoga? We saw Karma Yoga, where through one's senses performs bhakti, jnana through one's mind, and Bhakti Yoga through one's prana, artha, dhiya, vacha, like that person engages bhakti. So after hearing these 4 shlokas, Arjuna now gives his verdict. And he says, my dear Lord, I accept you as Supreme Personality Godhead with full faith. Arjuna vacha param brahma param dhama pavitram idamuttamam purusham shashvatam divyam adi devam majam vibhum ahustam rishayah sarve devash naradas tatha asito devalo vyasa swayam chaiva bravishime. Arjuna tells to Krishna, my dear Lord, through my pratyaksha praman, through my anuman praman, I have come to the conclusion you are the Supreme Personality Godhead. And then Arjuna says, through Shabda praman, I have heard from Asita, Devala, Vyasa, Narada, they also say you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here Lord Arjuna, now finally in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, gives his verdict that Krishna is indeed the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how did Arjuna come to this conclusion? Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, that is what is called as parampara pranali. through parampara. Arjuna got to hear directly from Krishna. So either we get to hear about Krishna from Krishna or from the bona fide representative of Krishna. Somebody please read out this beautiful puppet. Please.
I want to read.
Yes, please.
Here Arjuna expresses himself through the grace of Krishna. If we want to understand Bhagavad Gita, we should accept the statements in these two verses. This is called the Parampara system, acceptance of the disciplic succession.
So Parampara system, disciplic succession means now Arjuna is saying Krishna is a Supreme Personality Godhead. Arjuna heard from Krishna and now we are hearing from Arjuna. Arjuna making the statement. So Prabhupada is saying this is called as Parampara. You know, Krishna is told to Arjuna and Arjuna is telling us by Arjuna making a statement. That's what Prabhupada is referring here. Please go ahead, Mother.
Unless one is in the disciplic succession, he cannot understand Bhagavad Gita. It is not possible by so-called academic education. Unfortunately, those proud of their academic education, despite so much evidence in Vedic literatures, stick to their obstinate conviction that Krishna is an ordinary person.
Despite having all these evidences spoken by himself, Krishna, given in the authorized scriptures, even acknowledged by Arjuna, there are some fools who are proud of their academic qualification and they fail to understand. So be it, Prabhupada says. And then further, Arjuna speaks. O Krishna, I totally accept you as truth. All that you have told me, neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand you personally. Indeed, you alone know yourself by your own internal potency, O Supreme Person, origin of all, Lord of all beings, God of gods, Lord of the entire universe. So here, Arjuna totally accepts Krishna's statements as truth. So Srila Prabhupada, in this very important verse, 14th verse purport, first of all establishes the importance of parampara. Then emulate the spirit, which means, as Arjuna said, I accept everything that you said as it is. Prabhupada says that is a way of accepting Bhagavad Gita. You can't say I accept this part of Bhagavad Gita but reject this part of Bhagavad Gita. We accept in totality. And who does not understand? Nobody can understand Krishna unless they have received the mercy of Lord Shri Krishna. And after this, Arjuna makes a request to Lord Shri Krishna in the 16th and 17th verse. Up to 18th verse, Arjuna makes a request and Arjuna said, please tell me in detail of your divine opulences by which you pervade all these three worlds. How shall I constantly think of you and how shall I know you? I am very eager to hear. In other words, he requests Krishna to describe how he can be appreciated in his all-pervaded aspect. And actually, this is the first time Arjuna actually asked a question after the 8th chapter, verse number 1 and 2. Until now, Krishna has been speaking in that way. And this brings us to the last section of the 10th chapter, E for everywhere, where this consists of verses from 12 to 42. So I know our time is up. Not time is up, we still have 6 minutes. But some of you might wonder what's going on. We have spent 55 minutes or 50 minutes odd on 11 verses or 12 verses. How am I going to cover? Well, the good news is today, I'm just going to give you a 2-minute synopsis. You're going to go back at home, open your copy of Bhagavad Gita and read this set of verses, wherein Lord Shri Krishna briefly speaks about his 82 opulences. In other words, the purpose of Krishna speaking briefly about his opulences is to just establish the fact that how we can think of Krishna, meditate on him and see him everywhere. I will just read out 1 or 2 verses and just to let you know what Krishna speaks about himself or his opulences, beginning from verse number 19. Krishna says in text 19, yes, I will tell you of my splendorous manifestation, but only of those which are prominent to Arjuna, for my opulence is limitless. Text number 20. I am the super soul Arjuna, seated in the hearts of all living entities. I am beginning of the middle and the end of all being. Text number 21. Of Adityas, I am Vishnu. Of lights, I am the radiant sun. Of the Maruts, I am Marichi. And among the stars, I am the moon. Text number 22. Of the Vedas, I am the Samved. Of the demigods, I am Indra, the king of heaven. Of the senses, I am the mind. and living beings have the living force consciousness. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna continues to speak about himself. So it does not mean Krishna is Indra. It does not mean Krishna is the mind, the king of the senses. What it means that I am the source of their strength. Among the animals, I am the king of animals, that is a lion. Does not mean Krishna is lion. It means I am the source of his strength, of his power. Like that, Lord Shri Krishna explains his 82 opulences. He is the source of all the opulences, the name, the wealth, the fame, strength, etc. And finally, after naming 82 opulences, Krishna concludes by stating that these simply hint at his glories, since he pervades and supports the entire universe with a mere fragment of his energy. The last verse of the 10th chapter. Athava bahunayitena kim jnatena tavarjuna vishthabhyaham idham krishnam ekam shena sthito jagat. Translation of the 42nd verse, please.
But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe.
Many times people ask this question, show me God, or else how we can perceive God in this material nature. In the chapter 10, Lord Shri Krishna explains how a spiritualist can simultaneously perceive Krishna everywhere through his vibhutis and simultaneously know Krishna to be the source of this creation. However, this requires more than intellectual understanding. It actually calls for transformation of one's consciousness and revelation from within. And that revelation from within happens by the mercy of Lord Shri Krishna. Therefore, the purpose of Bhakti Yoga is to please Krishna. The purpose of our service is to please Guru and Gauranga. When we do that, that's the time the spiritual knowledge is revealed within our heart by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. With this, we come to the conclusion of today's discussion, where we saw the acronym for this chapter was C, the source of everything Krishna establishes. And how do we understand the source of everything? When Krishna said, I'm the source of the great rishis, the great devatas, we can understand Krishna only by if Krishna speaks about himself or through his bona fide representative. Therefore, Krishna said, Arjuna, hear about me or hear from me. And why Krishna speaks about his opulences? So that we develop natural attachment, attraction, and reverence for Krishna. And then it becomes easy to meditate or remember Krishna. After this, Lord Shri Krishna spoke about the 4 very important shlokas. Who is Krishna? He is the source of all material and spiritual creation. And then Krishna spoke about what does the devotee do? How does the devotee live his life? Who knows the secret about me? And the 3rd and 4th verse, which is the 10th and 11th verse, Krishna speaks about how I reciprocate to the tireless, constant service of my devotee. And finally, Arjuna declared Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then he requested Krishna, kindly share how you pervade this entire universe with me. And then Krishna spoke about his 82 vibhutis, concluding with the statement that, Arjuna, what is the use of all of these? It is like a spark of a fire, as my glories are unlimited. With that, we come to the conclusion of today's discussion. When we meet Krishna willing tomorrow, we'll discuss and see now a PowerPoint presentation by Krishna, where Krishna would show, not speak, show his universal form to Arjuna. So until then, have a wonderful evening. Thank you all for joining it for today's discussion. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.